Hello and welcome back to Worthing Watersports. Just come back from a nice trip in Cornwall where I got to try some of the new 2025 equipment, including the wings. And this is a new windsurfing board, obviously. This is a new Ultra Freewave from Duotone. Yeah, I just ran out of time whilst I was there to do the video on this, but I've got some footage which hopefully I can put on top of this video of me riding this board. Off the bat, when Duotone said they were completely redesigning the Freewave, I was a little bit worried. The Freewave is one of our best-selling, or if probably is our best-selling windsurfing board, especially for around here in Worthing and sort of the south coast. We get a lot in, especially in the summer, we get a lot of bump and jump. And for sort of like the medium weight, sort of heavier guys, the Freewave is a really good way to really enjoy the conditions that we get in the summer. Big free ride boards are a little bit too wide for the windiest seas that we get and the rougher seas that we get. And then a lot of people find that dedicated wave boards like the Grip are a little bit too small and a little bit too low on literage around the back foot to get going. And yeah, lots of people just enjoy the 5.8, 6.5 weather, 5 meter. I mean, I don't know what this is recommended down to. Max sail size 6.2. So yeah, you could probably ride like this is a 94 litre this is. This says max 6.2, but you could easily use like a 4.0 or 3.7 on this. So yeah, this is why I got this board to try this. This is probably the best selling size for us. A lot of people go for the 1.1, is it the 110? There's a 105, 95. Not many people go for the 85, which is the smaller one. This is probably our best seller. This and the 105 is probably our best seller. It just covers that middle range. But yeah, so when they redesigned the whole board, I was a bit like, you know, the Fanatic Freewave was a really good seller. A few people didn't like the stubby. But then since then, as it's moved to Duotone, the same shape has been consistent for quite a long time. And just has come in a few different constructions. There was obviously the Textreme at one point. But yeah, so moving on to the 2025 Fanatic Freewave, which is now, well, there's the Ultra, it's the Ultra Freewave. It's a new shape and it comes in a standard. So that's be the Ultra Freewave, or it comes in the Ultra Freewave SLS, which is made in a different factory. It's made in the Duotone factory. So all the 2025 Duotone boards for 2025 are made in the new Duotone factory, which is the same place that the D-Labs are made. So that is different to last year's Grip 3 and Grip 4 SLSs, whereas only the D-Lab was made in the new Duotone factory, whereas for 2025, anything SLS or above, so SLS and D-Lab, are now made in the new Duotone factory, which means they are CNC made and almost basically custom handmade, every single one. And as I was raving so much about the D-Lab, now they've transmitted that over to the SLS. Like, the value for money on the build quality of these boards is insane. And it was something that you could only get with the D-Lab, but now they've transitioned all the SLSs over it. So effectively the old team editions, so not the standard boards, these are now made in that factory. And because they're CNC'd, they are made how they were meant to be shaped, basically. And you do really notice that on the boards that have cutouts, especially the Grip 3. They are very sharp, and you feel that when you're riding. They're very accurate. You know, they do everything they're meant to do. They're not smooth, and not everything is like softened out. They are like sharper, and yeah. But also then there's a weight reduction. So I'll go through my list of things, and then I'll go on to how it felt. No, I'll tell you how it feels. So personally, I was a bit skeptical about it having a square tail. I think a fishtail, from my history, helps with release. But having used this and how a lot of modern boards are going with a longer tail, what I've started to realise is a longer tail, like the Skybrid as an example, just make it a really dramatic experience, comparison, a board like that, where you've got a longer tail, the board will sit higher on the tail. And you don't really windsurf on the nose of the board unless you're tacking. You're generally windsurfing behind the mast track and basically having more aid at the back of the board. So if this is the back of the board, it's going to sit slightly higher even when your body weight's further back, because there's more volume behind your back foot. If you've got a fishtail or anything that's cut off a bit smaller, you know, a fishtail is going to go into the water a lot easier than a square tail is going to sit higher up. So that's what I noticed about this board, is the get up and go. That's what I think makes the get up and go better than the older model of the Freewave. And then, yeah, not sure what they've done to the rocker line and the outline of the bottom of the shape, but basically it felt like there was no real negatives. So the weight has been reduced, the build quality has been increased, the up and go has got better, And then basically the main difference I would say is it rides through chop faster and way more controllable and smoother. So like, I think FreeWaves used to be freestyle wave boards, but I think now they're more free ride wave boards, which is what this is. So it's more of a, you can still do freestyle in it. I still did a not Spock, but a Vulcan on this board. It still is a free, you know, it has actually got quite a similar shape to a skate actually at the back, like the square tail and the round smooth finish and the flatter rocket line. But what I think these boards are and where I sell them is, say the Blast or the Gecko is too big and too wide for the conditions that you ride in. Maybe the side chop is too big, and you know, usually on the south coast that's what it's like. You get a constant, consistent side chop. When you're blasting across the wind, the width makes the board tip over and roll from side to side when you're trying to rail out, and the board just basically feels too wide. And then obviously a wave board is too narrow, and you don't get enough up and go to get going for a lot of people, unless you're like super lightweight or it's absolutely cranking. So if it's around 20 to 30 knots, you need a board in the middle, and that's where a FreeWave comes in. So you've got the long length, the flatter rocker line to get you up and going. You've then got a longer rear tail to help lift the tail up to keep when you put your body weight back, because you have to be, we all know you have to be a certain distance away from the sail to feel comfortable to lean against the wind, but then you need the back of the board to lift up to help you go forward. So in onshore conditions or conditions where you can't bear off too much or it's not perfectly flat, you need as much support as you can so you don't have to bear off too far to get off the beach, but also get planing early to then be able to then lean upwind or go downwind or whatever you're going to do. So yeah, that's where FreeWaves sit, in my opinion, right in the middle of a free ride and a wave board, and gives you the best of everything. So it used to be called like bump and jump boards, where the conditions are sort of mixed, but this makes it really fun in those mixed conditions. So you can jump, you can start getting into wave riding. For heavier people, these are definitely really good boards to get you into the learning how to bottom turn, helps with the jibes. The one thing I would say whilst I was looking at the board that's reminded me is the deck shape has changed significantly. So there's quite a flat section around the sail, and that kind of and there is a bit of, so it's flat here, and then there's a bit of a bevel on the side. And what I found is when I wasn't fully planing, that like level foot helped me sort of get into the right position to get going. It also, when you're jibing, like slalom boards have this, where they have a flat deck and then they have the rails, you really know where your foot is when you lean onto that outer rail. So you take your back foot out the strap, you then put your outer or inner foot onto the rail. If your board's either completely domed or completely flat and then sharp on the edges, you don't really know where you are on that rail. But because it's flat, maybe like, I don't know, A5 wide there, it is sort of roughly that, and then it rolls down. When your foot is on that edge, you sort of really know where your foot is, and I think that's really, really helpful when you're jibing. Peggy, what are you doing? Come on, here. She's jumping around on a board bag. Come on, Pegs. Nope, she's just looking at me. But yeah, the flatness also, I can't quite explain why it helps, but I do think that a flatter board, I'm trying to think how I can, what other boards I've used that help promote this, but I'd say probably slalom boards are the closest comparison. Again, if the deck is completely domed around the sail area, your body weight and how you're standing isn't quite level, and that will then dictate where your body weight is, and then also dictate how flat and level the board is. And to get planing, your board needs to be pretty flat. So yeah, the deck being flat here and in between the two foot straps, when you're not planing, your feet are pretty level, and all the momentum and everything that you're doing through the sail is all keeping the board nice and level. I think if it's domed, your foot's then sitting on a dome, and you're probably more likely to roll the board one way or another, which is going to stop it from getting planing early. So I think that's quite a smart little detail that I notice, especially on my back foot. Again, like in the last 2 years, I think it was, when they changed the Duotone, they changed the length of the track. This is shorter, so there's less room for you to get it in the wrong position, but it also saves on weight. And that's the same for the rear fins. Yeah, so the rear fins have the new box. There's no adjustment on the sliding fins, which again brings the box sizes down, which reduces the weight. They've got the new Duotone foot straps, which are very simple on the top part, the same amount of padding on the bottom, but then this basically can't hold any moisture, so that again keeps the weight down. And then the construction being made in the new factory with a new layup. Yeah, so this one, I mean, me and Nick were talking about it. The thing to think about is not a lot of people are probably going to change from the 2024 to the 2025, but that is around 300 grams lighter. What most people are going to be doing is changing, probably updating at some point from a much older board, which are made in a completely different factory. And that was the main point I was trying to get to on the Grip 3 and the Grip 4 when they got moved onto the SLS with all these new additions, is the weight difference from the boards that people probably have is way more than 300 grams from last year. You know, when I weighed the SLS to, I think it was the Mamba, that was significant. But then you go to like the D-Lab, I can't remember which way it was, but it's like around, off the top of my head, it's around a kilo lighter. So this board is 7895 grams, so just under 8 kilos. So it's basically 7.9 kilos, which, yeah, like that weight difference is also going to really help the up and get going and the planing and the early planing feeling that you really want, most people really want from a FreeWave, a bump and jump FreeWave board. What else did I notice? Yeah, the smoothness in the chop, like planing, leaning back, like really had good fun. I was on a 5.0. Most people would probably use this with around a 5.8 or 5.5. Yeah, great fun. I was on a wave sail, so I was on the new D-Lab Superhero D-Lab 5.0, which, you know, doesn't have a very low cutout, so I wasn't really closing the gap. But with these boards being the crossovers, those sails really work still for planing, like bump and jump, blasting around conditions. I didn't really think about the sail I was using, but, you know, this ultimately, best sail for this, I would say, is the Duke or the Duke SLS, which is the new one that's out for 2025. Peggy, here, come here. Not listening. Oi. The ultimate sail to match with this is the Duke. Yeah, because that's a bump and jump sail, has a slightly lower cutout from the boom to the mast foot, which allows you to close the gap a little bit, but not as much as an E-Pace, which is a kind of free ride sail, which I think the cutout would be too low for when you have like different turbulent conditions, or you're trying to bottom turn, or you're getting into wave riding. You know, you do need a bit of gap so you can lower the sail without it touching your leg or touching the board or the foot straps. So yeah, the Duke is the one for this. So what did I write down after my session on Marazion? So yeah, it was an onshore day. It was bump and jump, perfect bump and jump conditions, small little like shoulder, waist high waves coming in. So I got a few little turns, but this is like probably the biggest board I'd ever really use. I don't really do much free riding anymore, much slalom. So this board is a little bit big for me, but for heavier guys, they would really be able to turn it. But I still got a few little turns on it. So FreeWave is now CNC built, 300 grams lighter and a stronger layup because it's made in the new construction, the new factory, which is the case for all the SLSs for 2025. Totally new shape, the get up and go, the speed and comfort over the chop, which I've talked about, and then it definitely is faster and smoother over that chop. So in turbulent conditions, you don't feel the chop so much, it just sort of went through it. Span out less, well, it actually didn't spin out at all, but you can feel that the side fins are more locked in, if that makes sense. Some people don't like thrusters and things like that, especially if they're just blasting, because they can turbulate the water. This didn't happen. I didn't get any weird feelings. It just basically went forward, and I kind of forgot that I had 3 fins, which is really good, because then when you want to start going wave riding, they're on there and you've got the extra grip and the extra angle you can turn in. So yeah, there's no real like downfall to having the 3 fins in now, because they don't turbulate the water. It all just runs in that direction. Better wave performance. It's a more, so this is the comment I made. It's a more front-footed feeling, which will help people get into wave riding. So can't quite explain that, because the tail's a little bit higher. Maybe that's maybe why it's happening. Tail's a little bit higher. The way the board wants to blast forward, you can then put more body weight on the front foot, which helps people and gets them into wave riding. Because if you're used to slalom sailing and all on your back foot, or speed sailing and you're all on your back foot, to get from that position to then bottom turn to then wave ride, your stance and everything is going to be way too outboard and way too leaning off the rail on the back and pushing on your back foot. You need to sort of be more in a slightly more upright position, so that when you then unhook and then start doing your bottom turn, you know, it all feels more natural and it all promotes in that direction. And that's where a more front-footed board is good. And that's what this has gone to. Shaped flat rear deck, which was what I was talking about with the jibing. Uses the rail more for planing. Yeah, weirdly, I thought it tacked really well, which means it's using the rails more, so which will also help for tacking and jibing and bottom turning. I just found that my planing tacks were really good, which, you know, there's no real problem with that. But what that really shows us is that the rails are engaging more without cutting in or like disrupting the flow. So to do a planing tack, you need to be going fast and smooth and consistent all the way around. It did that, and then that's another benefit I guess you get of a rail that's working and a front-footed board that's where the rails are working, which is why the wave performance is also increased as well. So yeah, that's the 2025 Duotone Ultra FreeWave SLS. So basically the replacement of the older FreeWave. Just do a little twirl. So it comes in a really cool purple with a yellow fade at the bottom. And yeah, so the deck is pretty, I don't know if you can see that on that angle. Deck is pretty flat here, but has the rails on the side, pretty flat on the top there, up to about this, up to the sort of back of your heel. And that's where you put your foot when you go over to jibe. So you have your foot and it helps edge the board round and down. I think that's a really nice feature. And then I'm not too technical with the shape of the bottom. And then yeah, 3 fins, so it comes with all 3 fins on the 95. I imagine what they did before was the 115, just had 1 big fin. And yeah, square tail at the bottom. I'll turn it around for you. So square tail on the bottom, but it's quite a bit, it looks to me like it's a bit longer on the tail, but maybe they've just filled in the swallowtail. I need to sort of get a measuring ruler out. And then yeah, the weight of it is significantly lighter than before. So yeah, that's the Duotone 2025 FreeWave. And just as a complete summary, I don't see there being any negatives. I just see positives and a refinement, even though it's a completely new shape, but a refinement in the concept of the FreeWave, which is a middle board between a free ride and a wave board. So yeah, weight reduction, better through the chop, better wave riding, better up and go, lighter, better construction, high quality. Like, I think they've done a really good job to update an already very, very good and best-selling board. Give us a shout if you want to try it.